Just after 2 o'clock. It's 1 minute past 2. And I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Budget Committee on today, the 5th of March, 2026. So I want to welcome all members. I want to welcome Minister, and I would like to welcome the team from Provincial Treasury, led by the HOD. So I am Leon van Wyk. I'm the chair of the Budget Committee, and I think just to formalize matters, I will just ask the members to note their attendance. And after that, we'll just go onto the online platform and pick up members attending there. And then we will officially welcome Minister Bartman and the Provincial Treasury team. So over to you, members.
Thank you very much. I am Benedicta van Minnen, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Minister and officials. My name is Noko Masipa. I'm an alternate. Thank you.
Good day, everybody. Good day, Minister. Grant Marie, alternate member of this committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and everybody present. I'm Member Boyson. I'm an alternate member. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Johnson, alternate member of the Budget Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beauty Stoffels, and I'm a member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues. I'm Basil Petrus, member.
Dave Bryant, member.
Good afternoon, Wendy Kaiser-Philander, alternate member.
Thank you very much. I'm going onto the online platform for members who are with us virtually.
Afternoon, Chairperson, and afternoon, everybody. My name is Norman Kontlo, member of the Budget Committee.
Good afternoon, Chair and everyone. Norma French Mbombo.
Good afternoon, Chair. Derek Wessels, alternate member.
Thank you very much. I see Member Walters has joined us.
Thomas Walters, a member of the legislature.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Minister Bartman, to do the introductions.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I'll ask the team just introduce themselves. There may be one or two faces the committee doesn't know as yet. And then I'll ask the team to jump straight into the presentation, because I think speaking for 40 minutes was more than enough. But Deirdre Bartman, Minister of Finance.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. Julinda Gantana, Head Official Provincial Treasury.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Victor Sedna, DDG Fiscal and Economic Services.
Good afternoon, Ashley Russell, Economist, Provincial Treasury, Budget Office.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Owen Wilcox. I'm Chief Director, Public Policy Services.
Good afternoon, Lenke van Oosthuizen, Technical Specialist.
Good afternoon, Kim Engel, also Local Government Budget Office.
Good afternoon, Delazie Samuels from Urban Econ.
Good afternoon, Talia Alaba, Urban Econ Service Provider for the Mayor.
Good afternoon, Malcolm Boyson, Provincial Treasury.
Thank you very much. And I think, as Minister indicated, we will move straight into the briefing on the Municipal Economic Review and Outlook. Certainly, Minister, thank you very much for the speech earlier this morning, in which you tabled the Miro to the House, and we look forward to the presentation and no doubt the details that will follow from there, and then the members will have an opportunity thereafter for any questions or comments or further elaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will do the presentation with Ashley next to me here. But I think as part of the maybe opening remarks, just to highlight for members that the Miro publication is the socio-economic publication that Provincial Treasury undertakes on an annual basis, primarily to assist our municipalities and government as a whole in terms of evidence-based decision-making and resource allocation. So it builds on the high-level analysis that PERO did by taking the analysis to a district level in terms of looking at performance of different sectors such as economy, tourism, service delivery, health, education, and so forth. I think going forward, the intention is to align the publication of the Miro with the PERO so that it can give that comprehensive picture in terms of the performance. And then the data that we are using, I think Minister indicated earlier in her speech that it covers the 24-25 financial year, and it's based on number of sources that we use, trusted sources that we use, including also confirmation with departments and entities in the province. So maybe just moving to the first slide in terms of the outlook, we're going to, or the outlook of the Miro, it covers the macroeconomic context. Section B covers mainly your GDPR and jobs. And then Section C of the Miro covers the safety and well-being. We've introduced some of the innovations, Chair, in this version of the Miro. Some of the innovations that we've introduced, firstly, is the socio-economic profiles, which have been incorporated in the actual Miro. The Miro also goes into, or it provides a town-level economic data. Tourism maps per district have also been included. And also what is key, Chair, is that we begin to track the impact that film and film tourism have in terms of the overall economic growth of the province, as well as job creation. And also what is also, or what will be very much useful to municipalities, that we are beginning to explore in detail investment opportunities across different districts as well as the metro. And also we highlight some of the strength and opportunities in terms of, or which highlights the municipal trade. And then some of the key messages, moving to the next slide, some of the key messages that are coming from the Miro. I think overall it tells a story that shows resilience, growth, as well as a confident outlook. And secondly, I think what we are seeing is that the stabilization in terms of energy supply has improved business confidence, and also is supporting the economic recovery across the province. There's also a steady increase in terms of private sector investment across different districts, confirming the business confidence and also supporting the growth trajectory of the province. The province is also, Chair, solidifying its position as a leader in renewable energy technology and also being the tourist destination of choice. I think there also what you're observing is that the MICE sector is also contributing immensely in terms of tourism development in the province. In terms of employment, what we are observing is that the province is contributing positively in terms of employment numbers, with unemployment levels having declined to below the pre-pandemic levels. Finance and tourism sector being among those that are driving employment in the province. Also, what the mayor is observing is that climate variability and extreme weather they pose an increasing risk to agriculture and as well as rural livelihood in the province, which also puts pressure in terms of the support that municipalities needs to provide. Chair, in terms of the macroeconomic performance, which I will run through, I think what we are noting, Chair, is that the global inflation has moderated from post-pandemic levels. South Africa's inflation remain within the South African Reserve Bank target band in 24-25. Uncertainties for export due to escalating, or there are uncertainties, Chair, for export due to escalating trade dispute, tariff increase, as well as geopolitical tensions. And then South Africa's economy also remain largely constrained with growth in 2024 being around 0.5%. GDP per capita decline over the past decade. And also what we are observing, Chair, is that the population growth is outpacing economic expansion. And lastly, its productivity and export competitiveness, Chair, has impacted negatively by challenges, or is impacted negatively by challenges in energy, water, as well as logistics. Chair, I will then hand over to Ashley then to proceed with the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Victor. I aim to do a deep dive or deeper dive into the spatial results, specifically relating to the economic or the GDPR performance regionally per municipality, as well as the implications of that for jobs, which rounds off Section B, and then that leads into Section C, which for the first time in this Mero publication, we've included the socioeconomic profiles, CEPAL-G as the acronym, where we basically assess and review the impact or the current state of socioeconomic indicators. And the thought process behind that is to show the effect that the economy, the expansion or contraction of the economy, or key aspects of the economy, and how that plays out into the socioeconomic aspect down to municipal level. If you look at regional GDP performance and forecasting trends, forecasting is always a dangerous tool, but it does give some sort of direction, specifically with regards to provincial and municipal budgets as to future allocations, specifically over the MTREF period. If we look at the overall picture from the post-pandemic recovery, which is a V-shaped recession, nothing untoward there. The key question is then sort of from 2021 on. Next slide, please, Malcolm. The key question is from 2021 on how suitable or how robust is the economy to absorb business activity, to spur business activity, or is it being constrained, and to try and unpack and identify what those constraints are. The picture is somewhat grim from 2021, constrained from 2021 down to 2024 and into the outer years in terms of the forecasts, with the overall Western Cape economy predicted at present, which is, it's important for this House to understand that we are assessing the 2024 GDP growth rates. So that's 2023 to 2024 confirmed GDP growth rates for the province, and that across the province we're seeing growth of under 1%. I think in terms of context, what this needs to be put into is that we have a net in-migration of workers into the province. So we're seeing demographics, population numbers rise at faster than a pace of 1%. And GDP sort of stagnate at 0% to less than 1%. So what that means is that your GDP per capita incomes generally across the province are declining. That means smaller bread baskets, lower disposable incomes, lower ability of households to purchase municipal goods and services. And then that then has further implications, which I'm not going to delve into too much, but in terms of municipal sustainability. Obviously, it's not across the board, but these are the realities that are facing households and municipalities as business entities, if I could use that word lightly. and their sustainability going forward. I think what the biggest takeaway that you might take out of all the economic jargon that I'm spitting out of here is that from an economic standpoint, households in the Western Cape and the country for that matter, certainly over the next MTRIF, especially now with the expected exogenous oil shocks coming from the Middle East, we're in for one hell of a ride. I think from a structural standpoint, if the question was to be asked, where does the Western Cape economy sort of evolve to, and what's underpinning it, or what are the constraining factors? It's no different to that of the national economy. But obviously, your factors of production, either sink or swim a regional economy, and ultimately that's the energy crisis or the energy crisis which we've come off. So while there is a more consistent supply of energy, that still constrains businesses from sort of expanding production and making that private sector investment, as well as droughts going forward. It was highlighted in Victor's opening speech that climate change is definitely a factor in terms of policies and how it's playing out on the ground. Logistics and transport infrastructure as well. Rail underpins any industrialized economy and the growth of that economy. And as a country as a whole, but certainly in the Western Cape, the rail network is an area that needs to be addressed, would certainly explored, because in simple layman's English, to move goods quicker from primary production through to secondary and onto the shop floors. The cost of moving goods in the Western Cape and across South Africa is just far too expensive and inefficient. We also see the unsustainable urbanization. If we see the flocking of semi-migrants, of affluent semi-migrants, as well as impoverished job seekers towards economic towns of center or economic centers, and the unsustainability of that, and the sheer pace that involves, it leads to a socio-spatial paradox. Basically, it's the gap between the rich and the poor, and it accentuates itself in the sort of, if you look at George, Neisner, the Metro, for example, as well, Drakenstein through Paul, what's happening there, Stellenbosch, we get a sense of the pressures that municipalities are facing themselves at a local government level. Moving on, if I could just look at if I could give you a taste of the regional sectoral performance, essentially the Western Cape economy is underpinned by your primary sector and tertiary sector. Okay, tertiary sector is finance. Finance is, Western Cape has always been a leader of this, dubbed the knowledge economy for some time. Net labor absorption of that sector, not the highest. Obviously, it's a highly skilled sector. So it speaks to a very different segment of the economy and of the socio-economy. The development economist in me prefers to focus on agriculture, which is the backbone of this province. The regression of this sector over time for various factors is definitely a concern, as it's the net absorber of your unskilled, because naturally when this sector is constrained, we see indigent numbers in municipalities climbing. Indigent numbers in municipalities climbing results in a net liability, not to be insensitive, but it relates to a net liability onto the municipal fiscus in the form of free basic services, etc., and we've also lost net ratepayers. Development potential and growth of any major economy or of any major emerging economy, should I say, is underpinned by manufacturing. And while the Western Cape has been quite innovative with this with regards to agro-processing and a number of other manufacturing initiatives, this is the big win, especially now with green manufacturing. Alternative industries is definitely is a focal point going forward. If I can look at the regional employment performance, what you're going to find here is that the picture that was painted, and that's why I've spent so much time on the first slide, which was the GDPR and labor. It's going to immerse itself in various other indicators all the way down, and it sticks true to economic theory. So this is nothing new. But we are finding that you'll have naturally where you have a constrained economy, low GDPR or stagnant GDPR levels, outpaced by net in-migration of workers, whether that be skilled, unskilled, semi-skilled. You'll find that the economy is not growing fast enough, especially in net labor absorbing sectors, to create new job opportunities. And we're seeing that in the net employment numbers, where the net employment is the metric for overall health and the direction of the job market. And we see that in 2024, there's a net loss of 33,000 jobs. So while, please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm saying the unemployment rate, Western Cape still the lowest in the country, performing quite well from a national perspective. I'm saying net jobs, the net employment metric, which is almost a deeper level, paints a picture that 33,000, in the region of 33,000 jobs would have been lost in 2024. And that's not a surprise given the net in-migration, as I've stated, and the stagnant GDP growth. We see that the unemployment rate obviously centers on, it's more accentuated in centers of perceived economic opportunity. So what I mean by that is your Metro, your Winelands, your Garden Route, and then you have your very rural unemployment, which is in the Central Karoo, which is a totally different scenario that from an economic labor perspective, because you're facing farming, unskilled labor versus your Garden Route, Winelands, and Metro. But we can see that the unemployment rate is accentuated in these sort of economic towns, and it's a national phenomenon. The country is sort of set up with large economic hubs, and then a lot of nothing in between. And I think going forward, it's obviously the economic planning is to allocate resources beyond your economic nodes, as these are saturated. If you look at all the metros across the country. Regional trade, I'm going to touch on swiftly over here. I'm going to move a bit faster as I get to section C, which is quite important. Any burgeoning economy has to look at its export potential. Export potential has a number of factors of production, which is obviously skills, infrastructure, investment. Western Cape, this figure is slightly skewed in that, yes, we are a net importer, but we are a net importer as well because a large chunk of those imports are towards fuels and oil that's imported, and that will actually that trade deficit will widen now given the expected price hikes to come off the global political pressures that we are currently witnessing. West Coast and Cape Winelands have performed within that context. The West Coast and the Cape Winelands have performed relatively well, showing trade surpluses. But generally, from an export perspective, and that's where the manufacturing kicks in, is that we need to prioritize alternative industries, specifically in manufacturing, to improve the export potential. But in saying that as well, there's the hard infrastructure from a national ports, from a national provincial level to enable these products to get to market quicker, which is not currently the case. Regional tourism, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, not to be insensitive to tourism. It is a major plus for the Western Cape economy. We're blessed with idyllic surroundings. It is a sector that has shown great resilience, especially post-COVID recovery. But it also forms part of a value chain. And if we look at the value chain connected in terms of the first slide that I presented, its overall growth percentage is no different to that of your traditional sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, finance, and trade. I can move into the regional investment performance. I think this is critical over here, as we see not only from provincial infrastructure, although the slide focuses on provincial infrastructure or departmental per district. Any key recovery of any economy starts with the government expenditure, and for the purpose of this sitting over here from a provincial standpoint, it's to look at sort of where those investments have been, and typically it's been in human settlements, transport, and health, which is consistent with the economic data coming off the floor, where, as I'll get to in section C, human settlements, there is a net demand. The province has allocated sufficient or additional resources to that from a regional investment performance perspective. Transport, as I've touched on again, which underpins any sort of economic recovery or growth trajectory, has been prioritized by the province, as well as health. I look at the regional investment performance. This is an area that I have a strong affinity to, because I believe that infrastructure-led growth is certainly the catalyst that is needed to change fortunes. What this graph in front of you, if I can just break it down into simplistic terms, gross fixed capital stock correlated with GDP performance. Okay. And in simple economic terms, it says that the more you spend on infrastructure, targeted infrastructure, there is a lagged effect, but generally a few quarters down the road, your GDP should improve. Now, that is ceteris paribus, all things equal. So what this is showing over years is that it's proving that economic theory correct, because we're seeing that although we have a stagnant economy, generally we always hope that the metro, being the big powerhouse of the region, pulls us out of that. The one sort of positive light in all of this has been the Overberg and the Garden Route district. And if you've driven through the Overberg and the Garden Route district, especially the Garden Route district, you'll have seen physically with your own eyes the additional infrastructure projects, George being now sort of deemed a secondary city. But you see it coming out in the GDPR performance of these two municipalities. So again, targeted infrastructure generally does lead to sort of more optimistic levels of GDP outgrowth. And obviously that should filter down, doesn't always, but it should filter down into higher GDP per capita incomes, higher disposable incomes for households, etc., etc. I think we now get to section C, which is the socioeconomic segment of the document, previously known as the SEPLG. Next slide, please. If I can fly through this without being insensitive, we see that when you have an economy that is constrained by economic growth, or the sort of stagnant economic performance, and what that means, especially in your primary sector and your secondary sector, which is typical of the labor markets outside of the metro, we find that your per capita incomes normally will slow first. Okay. And unfortunately, or fortunately, by having a robust system within the Western Cape, we are finding that there is a net in-migration into the province of job seekers, because economy within job-seeking potential within an economy will always flow to areas of perceived growth, governance, etc., etc. Okay, that's the economic data shows that now. All right. So from a demographics point of view, we're almost victims of our own success partly. All right. From an economic standpoint, in terms of having a stable-ish economy, all right, without any major supply shocks or contractions in key sectors. Even though the growth of these sectors is under review for various reasons that I've mentioned earlier, it's still perceived a place where job seekers are besetting upon in the hope of finding work, the primary and secondary sectors especially. The challenge with that obviously comes with the skill set and the provision of basic services for that, because there's a knock-on effect that people don't come alone. Okay. But look at poverty and food security again. This is all bears down from the picture that was painted, not the picture, the results that were presented on the first slide of a constrained economy. You'll see that while poverty and food security has leveled off or tapered off somewhat, we are seeing an upward surge slightly in your rural municipalities such as Central Karoo, which is a concern. Drakensberg in the metro, again, areas of perceived economic activity showing higher than normal levels of urbanization, means that your poverty pockets will be deepened in these areas, along with income inequality, the gap between the haves and the have-nots, middle classes eradicated. This then begs onto your inequality and Gini coefficient. It's a South African phenomenon, not a good one, not one to blurt out too loudly across the country, but the Western Cape is not immune to this. And while we do see that your Gini coefficient to your income inequality has tapered off somewhat, it is still, relatively speaking, quite high at 0.5 and above. Although the Cape Metro is the only region that is still above the NDP target of 0.60. Education, the province has performed relatively well in terms of the retention of learners. I think its matric pass rates, which has improved from 2023 to 2024, is well documented. Naturally, this is, I mean, I don't want to blurt over this too quickly, but I want to give it the attention that is required, especially if you look at the makeup of South African society and where your labor forces come from. Why this is particularly key, especially to non-metro municipalities, is that this is the first layer of your job market. Ultimately, when these people, these school leavers, depart the education system, they then get swallowed into the job market. And then the questions obviously asked is that at what level are entrance into the job market at academically? In other words, can skills be imparted to them? What skills can be imparted to them? And do those skills from a skills development at a post matric stage add value to the sectors spatially? So what that means is that can they be swallowed into finance, manufacturing, which is the key one for me, or is it low level absorption into agriculture? Because the key then is that the value add that these school leavers or that these job entrants make into those sectors. Health and well-being, teenage pregnancies have decreased in 9 municipal areas between 2022 and 2024. So we are seeing a stabilization, in fact, an improvement in numbers there, specifically with regards to rural health. Mortality rates are showing a downward trend, but you do have areas such as Laingsburg, which was mentioned in the minister's speech earlier this morning, as well as being an area of contentment or of worry. Sorry, yeah. And then just to close off, housing demand. These are obviously housing demand. From a housing demand perspective, there is a demand for the housing. The housing demand has increased over the past 3 years, with the highest average annual growth being in the Metro and the Central Karoo districts, which couldn't be more different in terms of the labor profile. So again, it shows a net two phases of net in-migration. It's showing net in-migration from a pure urbanization perspective into the city and the Metro, which is the economic hub of the province and is saturated. But then it's also showing a net migration, which I say was somewhat surprisingly, but also worrisome. It's into your rural municipalities, and that's job seekers potentially of municipalities or regions outside of the province, sort of seeking the province as economic refuge. And actually that pushes up the demand for not only housing. I mean, we're showing housing demand here, but it will place added burdens on municipalities for services. Access to basic services has increased and improved across municipalities. From a I wouldn't say from a worrying perspective, but from an element of that areas to be improved upon or assessed is obviously refuse removal and formal housing, which we've covered. Refuse removal is also born from the fact that there are structural constraints, and this goes back to the infrastructure. Is that before investment can be prioritized, it's the whole value chain, especially of social services, that need to be assessed. Refuse removal comes from landfill sites. Landfill sites are under pressure across the country, but certainly across the province, costing municipalities more to transport their refuse from source to landfill site, and the cost that involves. And obviously that plays itself out in the service of refuse removal. I think why basic services, sorry, if I could just close off on, and then safety and security is the last slide, but if I can just close off on basic services, I think what that shows is, yes, that number one, there's a constitutional sort of, there's a constitutional right for service delivery is well documented in media and all of that. It is the basic services underpins the business of a municipality through its trading services, the sale of well, it's property rates, water and electricity, and it determines by and large whether a municipality sinks or swim. Final slide is we've gone to, or which we get to, is obviously safety and security. Again, safety and security has been documented. The issues of it are well publicized. Drug-related crime remains prevalent, but we are seeing some pluses in terms of the change in serious crimes between 2022 and 2024, which I think is heartening. Central Karoo, given its dire economic outlook, surprise, surprise, is actually inverted its performance from negative to positive. Garden Route is also held in or reined in serious crime substantially, along with Overberg. West Coast, not as much. Cape Wine has also performed. Drug-related crime naturally persists across the province. Thank you.
I think, Chair, in conclusion, just to wrap up, I think the 25-26 Mero tells a story of a Western Cape economy that continues to perform relatively well, despite some of the challenges that it's experiencing, including the slow national growth, infrastructure pressures, and weak investment across the country. And then secondly, the point that I want to highlight as part of the closure is that the provincial growth has somehow moderated in recent years. However, improved energy reliability, continued labor market absorption, sectoral strength in finance, tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing, it continues to provide a foundation for gradual recovery. And as the province continues to benefit from its strong service base, expanding renewable energy investment, as well as competitive export sectors. I think, Chair, the last point that I want to just highlight is that the strengthening infrastructure reliability, supporting labor absorbing sector, expanding private sector investment, as well as managing climate-related risk will be very much critical in terms of sustaining economic progress and improving the overall well-being across the Western Cape. Chair, that is in short, the summary of the Mero that was presented by the Minister earlier. So we'll pause here then in terms of the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I think, this adds on to the speech from this morning. And it, certainly provides a detailed documentation, and certainly in terms of the various bundle of documentation that we received today, a considerable number of pages, and obviously a lot of work that is included in that. So I think that is certainly very valuable and important for us to look at. And I think, perhaps just before I hand over to questions, the one aspect that I certainly have noted, and I'm sure colleagues have noted, is if we look at the trend lines in a sense, and the hiccup that we then hit in the COVID period, in that 2021 period, we then saw that sort of recovery, but then you see the downward slide down those graphs over the last few years. And then, recognizing that Provincial Treasury is really the scorecard keeper here in the system, I suppose the questions that come up to me or come through to me on looking at the negative side, we've had the population in migration that we've seen, along with the impact throughout the country of of the economy not moving forward, population growth going faster, in other words, the negative trend of GDP per capita that we're seeing. However, on the positive side for the Western Cape, we've done pretty well in agriculture over the last few years. We've seen the improvement that has come on tourism, particularly international tourism, where we've managed to pull back a lot. We've seen a growth of a BPO sector that has taken place. We've seen the in-migration, which is driven, was partly driven, the construction, additional construction that we've seen. We're seeing that in the building plan approvals, where we've done very well relative to the country. And then I suppose if I try and weigh those against each other, it still remains quite concerning that we've not really shown very much, or I would have expected a little bit more on the positive side that should have come through in terms of the statistics. So maybe that's something that we can perhaps discuss, or you have some comments on that. So I suppose those are my initial thoughts there. And handing over now to committee, I see Member Bryant, Member Petrus, Member Stoffels, Member Marais. So I think we'll take those four in the first round. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Obviously, it's going to be tricky for us to ask incredibly detailed questions because we only received these a few hours ago and we still have a long time to go through them. But just on the presentations, I think I agree with the chairperson in terms of the positive trends. Significant improvements when it comes to the decrease in the Gini coefficient, I think is a very important one to note, and also the economic opportunities that are being provided, and also working as a magnet in terms of people wanting to work and live in the Western Cape. I've only got one question. It's probably just a technical one. If you could maybe just go back a couple of slides. It was where, if you can pop it back up. I don't know if we can, if it's coming up. No worries. Okay. Don't know if it was the last slide or the second last slide. Can you just make it a little bit bigger? There we go. That's the one. Yeah. So we got the exclamation mark on the right-hand side. It says refuse removal remains a challenge in some districts, while formal housing persists below 90% in all districts. Can you just explain what that means? I couldn't understand that. Formal housing persists below 90% in all districts. Can you just explain a little bit what that stat's referring to? Formal housing in terms of access to formal housing? Is it sort of the national program? Is it what that specifically means? Okay, that's my only question. Thanks.
Member Petrus.
Yes, Chair, I only see the export, the top 3 export partners. What are top 3 import partners?
The top 3 on import.
Yes.
On the import side. Okay. Thank you very much. Member Stoff.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, let me appreciate the presentation and from the department. However, I don't know whether we just do things because of the sake of doing things to get rid of these things without to be sarcastic or try to be funny. We just received this book, a presentation that my office have called the office to ask where is the presentation so that we can make effective and contributions on there. Now, hence I'm asking, I don't know whether here in the Western Cape, this new tendency is just for a tick box. Because as we sit here, people is listening to us. And we don't want to answer as if we are arrogant. I don't think that is the attitude. But without that, and remember, Chair, in the last quarter, the mayor was not there. Now it's there. And we don't really do justice towards it. But it's fine. The members can say what they want. We just carry on. So let's carry on. Let's carry on, Chair. But I'm just mentioning it for record purposes. Chair, if you go to the definition of the mayor, you will hear that the mayor provides comprehensive overview of the recent economic performance, or whatever you want to call it. But still, Chair, even with the presentation, I cannot yet call it a comprehensive, because comprehensive, it includes everyone, every component that contribute towards that mayor. And even within the presentation, there is some shortfalls. And this shortfalls is coming now for a very long time. And I think as the MEC, these shortcomings should now come to an solution in terms of how do we resolve this. And office, they will tell me, no, we are still going into the debate. We are still going to debate these issues, and you debate these issues, but every time these issues pop up here. If I go quickly, just quickly to page, what is this? There's not even a page here. It's so difficult then. Even in the book, if you go there in the book on page 16, you look to the population versus the indigenous households, and you bring that to this presentation. How do you balance it? Then you come and you then said on page, in terms of jobs, unemployment rate. Yes, the easy thing here is to say we are performing better than national government. We are not national government. We are provincial government. And our measures should not be national government. Our measures should be our people within our province. And I find it very disturbing that we still at a very low percentage in terms of unemployment rate in our outskirt places. Beyond the tunnel, after the tunnel. It's still a scary picture. And it should be still a concern. And when you talk about this economic comprehensive overview, it does not really cover our rural municipalities. Whilst Treasury have presented to us to say there is provision for those municipalities where there is no potential for economic growth, economic development. But I don't hear the committee report on that to say within this comprehensive plan, we have managed to dealt with this municipality through national government, through that provisional funds that they have for those kind of municipalities, in order to address this unemployment within those areas, all these kind of things. So I don't want to delay a chair. Refuge removal. It's declining. It's getting worse instead of getting better, because we are still sitting with landfill sites that is not licensed, that is not whatever, and so you can call these things. And every time when there's presentation, we sit with this problem. When are these things going to be resolved by MEC? So I don't want to access to basic services increase across municipalities. We sit with water crisis, it's a basic services. A lot of our people in our province is sitting with weeks without water, thanks to gift of the givers assisting us. So where does this statement comes to say, thanks, Chair, and I'm not going to be intimidated by a Member Masipa. Please, Member Masipa, allow us today. Please. We don't want to hear the truth.
Okay, Member Stoffel, have you completed at this stage? Okay. Thank you for that. I think you do make a number of valid points in terms of only receiving the presentation now and having obviously not had time to review the hundreds of pages of document that we have. And I think, as a committee, we can probably pick up on a number of questions at a later stage and then revert back to Provincial Treasury on that, and certainly explore a number of these issues within other committees as well. But I think we can deal with that when we look at resolutions. Over to you, Member Marais.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Minister and for the information. It's quite extensive, and I think it's information that we have to interrogate, but also it's a term of office that we have in order to use this information. So it's going to be something to probably sit and interrogate, but from what I've listened to, I do have a few questions just in terms of what has been presented, and it's only related to what has been presented. I wanted to know whether you mentioned the districts, but within the Cape Metro, it's quite a very huge area. How low were you able to zoom down into the metro when you do certain measurements? The metro used to be a unicity, and it had districts within the metro. So they say you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And I think if we're going to make any progress, we've got to zoom down to district level, even within the metro. We have a history of segregation. So in order to correct patterns of the past that still continues today, means that we've got to zoom down to those areas. And so I just wanted to know if you have zoomed down to that level in terms of this information you've presented. Or is it only those districts there and then the metro as a whole? Or do you have access to the metro on a lower level where you can actually zoom down on a district level? Then, just in terms of in-migration, perhaps you could correct me, Minister, if I'm wrong in my assumptions of what has been presented and said. Does it seem that we are importing poverty through in-migration? Does it mean that we're becoming poorer as migration continues into the Western Cape? Service delivery is going to worsen. Unemployment is going to increase. Is that the formula that we are dealing with here? That the in-migration of, as the presenter said, job seekers are coming here. We already have job seekers, plenty of them here. So is that the formula right now? Is that the illustration in terms of just my summary of what was presented? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bure. I noticed Member Masipa, Member Walters, and Member Nkondlo had their hands up. So I think we perhaps just take all of you now, and then we'll hand over to the department then to provide comments on that. Over to you, Member Masipa.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Minister, your presentation. I don't know what page, but on regional investment performance, I note the percentage in terms of the fixed capital stock and GDPR is just from 2 to upwards in terms of percentage, with no real rand value attached to. Are you able maybe to share the rand value of each, obviously, area, regions, your Cape Metro, your Garden Route, your Overback, and so forth? If you have got the details, I think it will be appreciated. Just on the point of Honorable Stoffel regarding the challenges of water crisis, any ideas of municipalities that are struggling with water? If so, what are the challenges? Is it a total lack of water or partial problem, and maybe just the cause of that particular problem? I just thought that maybe it's an important point because water is vital. Infrastructure of water are quite important to ensure that our economy really grow. Just on tourism. No, I think on population growth, but obviously combined with tourism. Maybe on that point, in terms of tourism, what is the kind of contribution, proportional contribution per district? Because I think there's been a point that was made by some of the stakeholders in the BNB and so forth, that they are seeing the statistics and the numbers that we are putting out in terms of the tourism, but their occupancy rate is lower, especially in the city of Cape Town. Maybe a question is really around where is this really money spent in terms of the time spent or staying or sleeping? Is it really here or is it outside if there is some numbers that you can share, that would be appreciated. But if it's not, then Chair, we can always request these numbers in writing. That's it from my side, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Masipa. Member Walters.
Chair, the question I'm asking is specifically something that interested me. It got my imagination sparked, that we picked up during the oversight visit now to the Southern Cape, where we had a presentation in my committee, the Premier and Constitutional Development Committee, on energy resilience. And it was quite inspiring what was being presented there. In fact, it looks like the Western Cape, potentially with the energy projects, that we might end up being a net exporter of energy by the year 2032, which honestly boggled my mind. I mean, this is now without building nuclear plants and and anything like that. Just from the accumulation of small-scale properties. Projects. I'm getting to the property part. Chair, has I need to formulate it that I'm not misunderstood. One understands the budgeting constraints and how revenue is measured, and we understand why not all revenue generated by the essentially projects of the province is necessarily reflected or usable in the budget. But certainly given the portfolio of properties, schools, clinics, properties that the province has it been looked at as a potential extra source of revenue for the province? Now, I suspect I know what the answer on that is going to be, but the second part of that is, even if it's not something that is directly coming out of the Western Cape budget, it is money that can be directed towards provincial priorities, even if it's not, to put it crudely, on the book. So, for example, if you have and I'm using this as just something that we explored in my committee just as an idea, if schools produce excess energy into the grid and whatever generated there is ring-fenced for schools to support them financially, and we know the pressures that we had due to the mismanagement elsewhere at national government, the pressure that was on the Western Cape budget and the difficult decisions that had to be taken. Is there a train of thought? Is there something being measured in that regard to look at possibly revenue streams out of projects like this to support particularly schools, clinics, shortages that we are currently experiencing? I can elaborate there. It's something that just tickled my interest. But and the broader point that I want to make is I'm very impressed with the notions, or call it the potential innovation, the seeds that are being sown in the Western Cape government. It's one of the nice things of being a newcomer here. It is chalk and cheese to what I've seen in the past, but I'm interested in the next step, because we are talking about actually a very fundamental rethink of government. You are seeing the whole of society and the whole of government actually happening, which I find very exciting. But my question is, are we taking advantages of, are we thinking transversely? Are we taking advantage of, in the positive sense, advantage of projects like this, of our property portfolios? Are we sweating our assets? Even if we don't get the money from National Treasury, are we looking innovatively at other revenue streams towards our policy priorities? And there's one example. So, Chair, that was quite an elaborate, close to a political speech that I gave there. But my key question is there thinking? Do you have examples of that thinking? I gave a possible hint in the direction there, and I would love to hear your response. This is also not a yes or no type of answer I'm expecting. I'm interested in the thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Walters. I think we might have to impose a paper levy on you, because the Provincial Treasury are starting to run out of paper and pens to write on you. But we'll give, I think, Member Nkondlo's hands up, and I think in the meantime, it looks like Member Boyson has also got a question, and it appears that the Chief Whip, I think, has also got a question there. So I think we'll cut at that point for this round of questions. If you've still got an extra, you've only got one page left to write on. So I think those questions will have to be covered in that one page, Members Nkondlo, Boyson, and Bosman.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully I'm audible.
Certainly are.
Thank you, Chair. Let me welcome the presentation of the long-awaited Municipal Economic Review Outlook. And let me also agree with both Member Stoffels and Member Bryant around the fact that this becomes a disabling exercise when you only get the information at the time you must discuss. It really paralyzes our ability to do our oversight work. And I would think the minister, as somebody who is a former member of this house, would understand this and be sensitive to us in being effective in our work. And actually, one would have requested, even in the last presentation of the Mero, that if it is possible, that the department tries and provide us these books at least a week or so, because we're told it was delayed because of insufficient budget, if I remember correctly. But I think it is really unacceptable that we always get the book on the day and we are expected with this very complex data and economic data information that was presented to make informed analysis and questions, that gives a justifiable sort of engagement with the department on this very important work that they do of helping us to understand the municipal economic outlook. So I just want to place that on record, Chair, that this request continues, that can we get the book at least few days before, a week would do, or even 3, so that it helps us to read and come here, not only to be driven by the department on what we should ask based on what they present. We can read ourselves. We can actually make our own opinions and have more of a discussion of equals between us and the department. So I am pleading with the minister on that one. Secondly, Chair, is to say, I'm interested, I think, on this notion of the in-migration, which is an issue that we have been discussing, I think, for some time now here in the province. And perhaps we because we are politicians, and sometimes we've actually even gotten to rub off to the administration our political economy sort of observations about in-migration, because I think the same that it is said that economic data would have pointed to the fact that job seekers would be running to the Western Cape because of the economic growth, because of governance and the likes. One is interested to check whether does the department believes that it is so for the province like Gauteng, which is actually the biggest or the highest recipient of in-migration, which is around 1.4 million job seekers versus, I think, around 500,000 in terms of the numbers that are out there, in terms of this. So maybe this province to province or national or comparison must also, try to seek the balance beyond specialization, of the Western Cape, but just bring the data to help us understand a very serious phenomenon of a South African economy that has been opened up for citizens who historically, because of apartheid spatial way and infrastructure, would have closed them in provinces, former Bantustans. So the reality of the matter is that if we are not, and we become oblivion because we want, to say we are celebrating our own success, which is outside of context of the national and global dynamics, which actually could show the reality of the South African citizen. Because the South African citizen and the Western Cape citizen remains a South African citizen. And the truth of the matter is that even in the Western Cape, there continues to be professionals who chooses, because the political dispensation we have enables them to do so, to go and look for better prospects in other provinces. So the point that I'm raising, Chair, is the fact that I am not sure with the observation and what the department is saying, whether would we say that is the same in as far as a province like Gauteng, which is actually the highest in migration, whether the factors that are said to be, justifying why people are coming in the Western Cape, it is because of those particular reasons. So I think it's important for me, to underscore and understand this, and how we interpret this particular economic data, either for narrow, provincial or regional economy arguments, or to try and understand our national economy and how it is presenting itself. This links actually to the issue of the net jobs, and I would like I think the department to once again try and explain the issue that was raised around the net job losses in 2024. Perhaps if you could explain in which municipalities would these net job losses that I think were mentioned, where are they coming from, and what specific sectors of the industry? If one could at least understand better and have a better appreciation of that net 33,000 job losses around 2024. Because also another critique around the notion of net jobs, which even Stats SA would tell you that they do not utilize, is actually a critique also provided generally also by economists around that, because amongst others, whether it's job gains or net job losses, one of the things that becomes difficult is to understand, the extent to which these jobs, that have been created, in terms of the quality aspect thereof, particularly because you are just minusing, a number and doing more of a quantitative a comparison, and just looking at that number. And in there, it doesn't actually gives you, the type of jobs, the issue of seasonality, which is one of the things that we experience in the main in the Western Cape context, especially if you talk in the farm areas, because almost at every quarter you would know that people, depending on the season, would be losing jobs and gaining them back. But also we've got this now, the issue of EPWP that has actually be utilized as a platform, particularly to try and give economic participation of those that are low skilled, So then if you talk about that, you actually do not know, you're looking at this ballpark figure, but you do not know what exactly, are you talking about in as far as those jobs are concerned. So perhaps for me, that could also be nuanced and explained, particularly where the net job losses would have taken place and in which industries, including the actual municipalities. I would be interested to actually understand that in the presentation that was made, and then one of the things in terms of the food poverty, it's interesting to see, I think in the graphs, I think that were presented, that shows food poverty, and Drakenstein at 43.7%, which is almost 44%, followed by Cape Metro, vis-a-vis others, And perhaps I'm not sure whether through data, the department was able to pick up what would be driving this, because one would understand that Drakenstein, which is very close to Stellenbosch as a municipality that actually has got amongst the richest, in the country, and actually those that are the highest paying taxpayers even of the country. I think a National Treasury, has confirmed that reality. So one would be interested, what would be, in that particular context, what would be the driver of food poverty in Drakenstein? And lastly, in that context, when the minister in her speech was presenting in the House this morning, she did mention, in the in what she refers as the resilience of the municipalities are some of the social interventions that would have been done by the municipalities. And my question in that regard, specifically, if you consider these municipalities with the highest food poverty, what would be the direct social interventions, that are being done or are there in those particular municipalities, let's say Drakenstein and Cape Metro, around this very, a problem of food poverty, but also generally, especially because we're talking with a provincial treasury, in terms of if there is even any deliberate budgeting, by treasury, towards municipalities, but also generally in the provincial government, in as far as these type of challenges, that we are seeing in these municipalities. Is there something of that nature that actually we could be referred to as a social intervention and of both the provincial government and the very municipalities? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. I'm going to go over to Member Boyson now. Member Boyson.
Chairperson, I found the answers to all my questions. I'm covered. Thank you.
So if you give us the answers, then do we know what the question is then? Thank you, Member Boyson. Then over to Member Bosman.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon, colleagues. Chairperson, through you to the Minister and the Department, Meru has been described as a forward-looking planning tool, specifically around data-driven budgeting that is intended to guide municipal budgets. Can the Department or the Minister perhaps identify which specific municipal budget allocations for the 25-26 financial year have been directly altered, or are there plans to alter, or have been prioritized based on the sectoral potential as well as the risk identified in these reports? And then a question on the formalization incentives. The Meru reports, as far as I've read to now, notes that approximately 80% of the township-based businesses remain unregistered and face limited access to finance. What is the Provincial Treasury doing to support municipalities in targeted local government interventions that simplify regulatory processes and integrate these businesses into formal value chains? And then just some specific questions around my constituency of Kanaland. When you look at economic vulnerability, the Meru report indicates that Kanaland's economy is one of the smallest in the province. I think, if I remember correctly, 0.2% of the provincial GDPR, and that expansion in the Kanaland economy is limited to just 0.5% in 2024. Given that the TRES index is projected to rise to 45.4% in 2025, indicating what I understand to be a deepening reliance on a very narrow set of activities like agriculture and dairy, what specific provincial budgetary support is allocated to help Kanaland diversify its economic base and reduce its sensitivity to climate and market shocks? And then also, the dairy industry has been identified as Kanaland's strongest value chain. Milk and cream, I think, is just over 68 million, was just over 68 million in 2024. How is PT supporting the planned upgrades to the water and electricity infrastructure that are cited as essential for maintaining the output of the large dairy processing hubs in Ladysmith? And perhaps I should sort of just add there, this sort of on top of the financial recovery plan that's currently in place. And then also the workforce in Kanaland sort of remains heavily concentrated in the low-skilled category. I think it's just over 47% of that workforce is in the low-skilled category, and most of the roles are semi-skilled roles with a very slow progression towards high-skilled employment. Is there any targeted upcoming allocations for technical and vocational training, specifically for the agro-processing and food technology sectors, to help youth move beyond low productivity occupations? Chair, I'm mindful of the fact that you said that the colleagues in Treasury are running out of pages, so I'm going to limit my questions to those.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Member Bosman. I think with that, I'm going to hand over to Provincial Treasury to try and this is, I don't know, dissect the elephant maybe, if we've got an elephant full of questions here. So I think over to you, team, and all the best there in responding.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I'm going to try my best to get to as many as possible, and I ask that my team, where it's very highly technical or where I miss something, please to assist. And if we do miss a particular question, if the chair can just then highlight that particular item so that we can know that we've gotten to as all of them, or if we need to come back in writing, then we are also able to do that. Chair, I just want to generally speak about the context of how we do the budget process, as well as the tabling for the municipal economic review and outlook. So obviously, as everyone here knows, we have our local government mandates, we have our provincial government mandates, and our national government mandates. And for example, this week we've had our Premier's Coordinating Forum where the Premier chairs meetings with the mayors of municipalities, and we engage with the mayors and the municipalities regarding the challenges and opportunities that they are faced with. And the reason we do that, and the reason we have these type of meetings with municipalities, and we also, for example, have the CFO Forum, the MM Forum. I chair the Provincial Government Governance and Budget Forum, also with the MMCs of Finance and the CFOs. And the reason why we have all of these various different engagements is because none of us, whether you work for national government, whether you work for provincial government, or whether you work for local government, none of us are each other's boss. We are all colleagues in different types of government, and each one of us, we have a particular job in terms of the constitution. And if I want to, for example, if I want local government and national government to respect the provincial mandate, then as provinces, we need to respect local government and national mandates as well. And that's really what the intergovernmental relations aims for, is that we all respect one another's spheres and each other's mandates. The municipal economic review, similar to the provincial economic review and outlook, are data and evidence within the budget process that we really table, and it looks at data and evidence historically. Where's your budget, or as some people would call it, the appropriations bill, and your adjustment budgets, or some people call that also even a mini budget, and your is forward looking in terms of what are you going to do about it now that you have the data, now that you have the evidence. We, for example, we table the PERO, we table the MERO, we also table a local government budget performance review for municipalities to use. The Department of Local Government also tables the socio-economic profiles for towns for the municipalities, and we've indicated to municipalities that we're able to source them this particular information so that they don't need to wait necessarily for the MERO publication, because obviously there's statutory deadlines in law as well. We also publish quarterly and annual reports too, which we table at the Provincial Parliament, both for the departments in the Western Cape government, but we also table quarterly reports and annual reports for our municipalities to the Department of not the department, sorry, the Committee for Local Governance through the Speaker, which they call the Section 71 reports. In terms of the MERO specifically, this particular publication, we indicated last year that because there are certain deadlines within the budget process, the national budget was delayed. So it wasn't because of insufficient funding. It was because of delayed tabling, which delayed transfers and delays procurement and delays the ability to get research, the ability to table research in time. And what you don't want is, you don't want to self-impose a deadline upon yourself and then compromise upon the quality of the data. So it's not because of of insufficiency of funds because of when you move one deadline, it automatically has knock-on effects for the rest of the deadlines. Hence, we requested permission from Parliament to table the MERO in this first quarter instead of last quarter, so that we can make sure that the quality of the data is sufficient. Further, in terms of just the information being embargoed until tabling, the information for MERO is and will continue to be embargoed until tabling, similar to the PERO, similar to the budget, similar to the MTBPS, and similar to the adjustment budget. However, and in that line, my current view is consistent with my views previously in my previous capacities. However, it does not prevent the committee in and of themselves to decide whether or not to have the MERO conversation at a later date or time, which is within the sphere and within the right of the committee and within the right of Parliament. But in terms of the right of tabling, in terms of the embargoedness and the confidentiality of information until this table, the minister's view stands at this point. In terms of the budgeting, what we also do, I'm going to ask the team just to come in terms of how we engage the municipalities in the SIME and the time process, how we engage them on their budget assessments, and how we advise municipalities to make sure that their budgets are credible. Again, part of our mandate, monitoring, oversight, and capacitation in terms of the municipal sphere, if one could call it that, is as we can advise and we can guide and we can give our advice, but it is up to the respective municipality at the end of the day to make a decision. And the same way, I wouldn't want a municipality to want to make a decision on behalf of a provincial government. I then also need to respect a municipality's right to make their own decisions on certain things. There are some questions that I think are more policy or budget intervention questions. If we don't have the answer today, I hope that for those particular questions, we might be able to come back to the members on the 12th of March with some of the answers to the questions. Because what departments would have had to do with the data and the evidence that we've been tabling, not only this particular publication, is we expect departments, it's not just for municipalities, we expect departments to take this information and to also be able to respond to where there are gaps within either the provincial system or from a municipal space to ask the MMCs for finance, how are you going to be responding to the gaps in the system? And I know there's quite a number of MMCs for finance that they always tell me how they appreciate the type of data that is published because they don't necessarily have the economic or even capacity in order to publish or pull together this type of data. Chair, we are very honest about the risks that we face in the system, and we do table the risks in the system within our respective books. Sometimes the risks are uncomfortable conversations, but part of you can't change something or improve upon something or fix something if we're not honest about the challenge that we face. And that is why we are honest about the risks that we face and we table them according to district and according per municipality. So each book, there are 6 books. For those who were here previously, the MERO used to be 1 book actually. The reason we publish 6 books is so that instead of an MMC for finance going through all 30 municipalities, it's easier for you to go through your district and your municipalities in your district. So every single municipality is covered in the 6 books. It will be covered within the district where the municipality lie. We also include an overview in each book to assist with the reading of the respective data. Something that I think is a really great information that we have in the book is the SARS data. So the SARS data is actual employment data that we have from SARS. And similar to SARS, we always aim in Provincial Treasury and the Western Cape government to publish the most official and accurate data as possible. So if there's two sets of data on something, we will always aim to publish the most official, the most accurate possible data. And if something does not exist, we will publish information, but then we will also put the respective notes and references in. And similar to the PERA, we also put the sources of data. We also publish so that members can see, so that officials can see where the sources are that we got the respective data from. The informal employment, we've also indicated informal employment. At the formal employment, I just need the team to assist me there regarding the EPWP. But if I remember correctly, the numbers that SARS published was excluding EPWP, and that would be over and above. So the EPWP information would be over and above the job gains that we published. But the team just need to assist me there. I remember a particular paragraph in the jobs figures regarding that. I want to make an example of how some of the reading of the jobs data is done. And for this purpose, I'm using the Overberg book on page 38 at figure 2.1.9, the top 5 sectors for formal jobs gains and losses. So the way that some of the information is published, we don't just give you the net gains or the net losses. We also give you all of the gains, all of the losses, and then what the net is. In all of the gains, we give you the top 5 that increased, the top 5 that decreased, and how we got there. We also give you, is it in the primary sector? Is it in the secondary sector? Is it in the tertiary sector or other? So for example, in Overberg, page 38, in the top 5 job gains, it was 71,637 job gains. And it was the top 4 was in the tertiary sector, the 5th was in the secondary sector, and then there's other. And then it shows you, for example, restaurants and mobile food service activities, other personal service activities, general public administration, short-term accommodation activities, processing and preserving of fruits and vegetables. Similar at the losses side, we also show the top 5, and then we show the net effect. So it's the plus on your gain and your minus at your loss, and then bringing you to your net amount. So I hope that also assists in the fact that we do table the detail. If there's detail that is not in the book, we will endeavor, chairperson, as best as possible to get that to the committee members. For the speech specifically, I do always try to focus on the trends. I know I try my best with the mayor not to speak more than 40 minutes. In my practice round in my office, when I timed myself, I was at about 38 minutes. And I try my best not to table every single specific detail that might be in the book. We try to publish the trends and the anomalies, perhaps, or something that might be a key highlight. Whereas the book really tries its best to make a comparison across the districts, across municipalities, on consistency on data and so on. And I look forward to hearing what members are really interested in going forward, even over and above the questions we have today. Regarding the budget interventions, I'll just ask that on the Kanaland items that the team just come in regarding both the FRP, the work that we're doing in Kanaland as well, and perhaps some of the work that is doing to also support the dairy industry, because with I have to get the wording correct because the Agriculture Committee chairperson will be very upset if I don't get the wording correct. Cloven hoof animals. Yes. Okay. So especially it also affects the dairy animals. And I'm going to use plain English for lack of, because I don't have the same type of expertise as some of the agriculture economists and so on, especially with the cattle and those animals that deal with dairy as well, is also affected by foot and mouth disease. And obviously that is an industry in the Western Cape that could be heavily affected by FMD. From a government perspective, in terms of vaccines, and this has already been announced previously, so I can speak about it, and I'll speak about it again a little bit next week, is that as a province, we've put aside 100 million rand in order to assist our agriculture department and our industries in this regard. And this is separate to any possible budget interventions that may or may not be announced next week. In terms of the municipal allocations, again, the Simon time and the team will just come in regarding the budget assessments, please, as well as the questions regarding the food poverty. For example, the social interventions of the municipalities. Again, in the speech, we tried to highlight one or two, but I'll just ask the team to give a more a comprehensive indication on that. On the in-migration, so this is similar to the risks earlier that we spoke about that we need to table. We want people to have opportunity. We want people to have access to services. So we're not going to close the Western Cape to people wanting to come to the Western Cape. Gauteng has a similar problem. MEC Mahile and myself have tabled the risk of in-migration to provinces at the National Budget Council and to the National Finance Minister on multiple occasions. Both MEC Mahile and myself have indicated to the National Finance Minister that we want the provincial equitable share to be reviewed. National Treasury is also now in the process of reviewing the local government equitable share, a similar formula that we don't necessarily always speak of as frequently as we speak about pairs. But these are things that are currently in review, and we do feel that when it comes to population growth, that even anticipated or forecasted population growth, that funds should follow the people. And we want that to be reflected much more appropriately within the respective equitable share formulas. And again, Chair, one person might come for job and another person might come for service. And when we look at the migration patterns, it won't necessarily be the same for every single district. Some districts might have larger in-migration and some might have larger out-migration. A trend that we were highlighting in the speech of out-migration was, for example, of youth out-migration from the Central Karoo area. Now, there are things one can infer about such data, but the causal link we do not have. For example, you can infer that it is possible that perhaps out-migration from a certain area might happen because someone is following a service elsewhere or following a job elsewhere, or even sometimes following education elsewhere. But those are inferences and not necessarily exact links that we have in this regard. In terms of energy and net exporter, yes, we are definitely on track to become a net exporter of energy. And this is across government programs and private sector coming together in order to reach our goals. You'll also notice in a lot of the goals of the Western Cape government, we don't just put our goals on the table, what we want to reach for the Western Cape government. We also put targets and goals on the table for where we want to go in terms of where we want the private sector to go. So for example, in the G4J document, you will see that we have a goal for public infrastructure investment, but we also have a goal for private infrastructure investment that we would like to attract into our province. Because if we say that we are talking about a whole of society approach, then we need to have a look at what can we do as government, what is in our control, what is in our mandate, what is within our budget capability, but also from residents and businesses and private sector perspective, what is it that others can do that is within their control and their perspective. In terms of schools producing excess energy into the grid, I think it's definitely something that schools and the WCED can consider. To my knowledge, there are already some schools that are connected to solar, and that information is published with our Energy and Water Council, and they have a dashboard regarding energy and megawatts coming in. In terms of the portfolios of properties that province has and being looked at and how we're looking at extra revenue sources, definitely. If we want to, the member would know that we've published an alternative and blended financing framework previously, and then we had to set up our internal governance processes. We have also started the exploration as to what are the type of finance mechanisms that are most appropriate for certain programs or certain projects. And it won't be the same necessarily for every department or even some projects. Some projects might be water that brings in a revenue, and you might want to consider project finance for something like that. Whereas in a different project, you might want to consider a triple P. Whereas in a different project, you might want to consider a joint venture. But what we are looking at in terms of balance sheets is really exploring what would that look like. Last night, I think it is last night, based on the time allocation, was 5 o'clock last night because of the time differences. Myself and some of the senior officials within Provincial Treasury and of some of the HODs in other departments had a meeting with the president of the New York Green Bank, for example, where we were asking them, how did you come to where you were? Because part of being responsible is learning from other institutions what they have done and how they got to where they are. Now, what is good for one state or one country won't necessarily work in your province or in your country. And that is why we have to make sure we speak to as many people as possible who have done alternative and blended financing before so that we can see what is more appropriate or less appropriate for us as a province. What can we do? What can't we do? Because the laws in different countries don't necessarily allow for the same financing instruments as well. So we will continue to speak to different stakeholders to really learn from one another about what we can do and how we can collaborate further. And Chair, I'm leaving all of the difficult technical questions to the team.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will deal with some of the questions, and then my colleagues will go into the more technical ones. I want to first, there was a question from, let me check. I think it's Honorable Brand. Oh, I think, let me start with Honorable Nkonhla. In terms of the net job losses, I think there was a request to say let's provide breakdown in terms of a district. We do have the numbers, Chair. For example, I can give for Cape Metro, the number of jobs losses was 24,125. Cape Winelands was 3,091. Garden Road was 3,063. Overberg 1,004. West Coast 1,003. And then Central Karoo was 293. And then in terms of the sectors that were impacted, it was mainly agriculture, manufacturing, and trade. But we can provide details around this, Chair. I think the request was to provide breakdown in terms of municipalities. We do have the numbers and which sectors are mainly affected. We have provided the key sectors that are affected in terms of unemployment or job losses. In migration, Chair, without being political, there are different reasons why people migrate, Chair. I think it also links to what Honorable Nkonhla raised. Similar situation as in Gauteng. People migrate for economic opportunities, improved service delivery. Some of them, it's for business opportunities. So whether to say, are we importing poverty? My response would be no, Chair, because some of the inputs to the province in terms of skills, in terms of business. But what MERO is looking at is looking at the impact of in-migration in terms of provision of healthcare, in terms of basic education, housing provision and other basic services. So that's what the Mero touches on. But whether we are importing poverty, Chair, my argument would be to say no, because it's a combination of both. It's people who are unskilled together with people who are skilled. So people, for example, come here for business opportunities. Some come here for job opportunities. So we are importing skills, we are importing business, we are importing capital to the province, together with the other ones that I've already mentioned. In terms of the revenue, yes, we are taking, I think Minister touched on it, we are taking advantage of those sectors that are doing well. For example, a boom in terms of development. We are working with municipalities in terms of development charges to make sure that some of these developers are able to contribute towards provision of basic services. Chair, we are looking at how do we take advantage in terms of increasing tourism. We are exploring different options there in terms of what we can impose as a province. Same with film development. And we are also looking at the issue of tariffs to say, are they cost reflective for municipalities? So yes, Chair, we are looking at those, taking opportunity of those sectors that are doing well. And also as part of our revenue strategy, we are looking at how we can take advantage of, I think, Honorable Waters made an example of energy sector. So it's also going to be part of the revenue strategy that we are driving to say, how do we take advantage of those? Yes. Which other question do I want to deal with? Oh, in terms of Kanaland, yes, Chair, we have funded in terms of the specific support that we have provided to Kanaland. We have funded through our grant program an amount of around 500,000. That's going to be focusing on supporting municipality in terms of revenue enhancement. We have recently also approved two support to Kanaland. One that's going to look at payroll audit for an amount of around 1 million. So it's going to look at how, firstly, look at the skills that it's going to be required for Kanaland to be able to operate effectively, and so forth. And also, maybe I might add that also National Treasury through the Smart Meter Grant, they have also provided support to Kanaland to the value of around 35 million. But my discussion with Kanaland when I visited them was also to look at that issue to say how we support Kanaland in terms of growing the economy of the municipality. They raised the issue of the two factories that are there that they've raised concern in terms of water provision, and we said we can support you in terms of engaging with those two factories. So, Chair, at a high level, that is some of the engagement. We are working with Kanaland in terms of the FRP. We are also working with Kanaland in terms of looking broadly how we can support them in terms of growing the economy so that they can also generate or improve revenue generation in that municipality. So, Chair, I have touched on that. I think some of the details, my colleague Ashley will deal with them in terms of the imports, in terms of the, yeah, all right.
It's good to go third. I've been covered by Minister and my DDG largely. But on the formal housing, there is access to formal housing, so bricked structures, not your informal houses, but it's generally it's bricked structures. There is a official definition for it. Welcome. Yeah, I mean, I'll gladly look it up for you and show you what it is, but it's essentially a bricked structure and not a backyard dweller. The top three imports into the Western Cape, it is a skewed one, but the top three is petroleum, footwear, and then ethyl alcohol, spirits, and liqueurs. Saying that we're a province that enjoys a good drink, essentially what this means, lightheartedly, but the petroleum one throws it out because we importers of petroleum. That trade balance is going to worsen now because of what's happening in the geopolitical tensions over there. So yes, we do have a trade deficit. I am of the opinion, and we were taught that export growth is the way that every economy should learn to or should pursue, especially as a developing economy. So we're still going to be in trade deficit for the next few meadows, certainly, but it's skewed by petroleum. To which level does the data delve into the metro? As an economist, this is one of the curses of practicing economics in South Africa. And this is not a dig at the country, it's a dig at the situation. We don't have primary level data down towards the town. Our municipalities, all these documents, since when I started in 2005, CEPLG and the Meadow, it was always aimed for not the sitting. It's very useful for the sitting, but it wasn't aimed at the sitting. It was aimed from the provincial treasury for municipal councils because they don't have the capacity to put these things together. But in saying that, those same municipal councillors appreciate these documents, but have also been coming to us for the ones that want to delve deeper to say, yes, but my constituency on this part of Cederberg, for example, how do I find out that data? And there is a problem across this country. It's an expensive problem to fix, but it's a problem that sits typically with Stats SA. Gross fixed capital formation, which is the infrastructure argument of infrastructure-led growth per municipality. I'll gladly sort out those. I'd like to respond to that in writing. It's far too technical and an issue to just respond here, and I want to get it accurate. I think I'll take it a step further as well to show where gross fixed capital formation is as a ratio of population size. I think that's apples and apples, because essentially you've got the metro sitting at about 885 million or 85 billion, sorry, and then you've got the West Coast district sitting at 13 billion, which sounds like, okay, but that's ludicrous. But then it's also in terms of the ratio to population. Yeah, in terms of the economy. Yeah, HOD asked me in terms of the trend analysis, very technical one, nice one for me on a Thursday afternoon. The trend analysis in terms of the COVID, the recovery, what is pushing those job losses off the, again, I want to respond to that in writing, as I do understand, look, as an economist get lost in data and they'll spew data at you. And then I wouldn't say it's overwhelming, but it's a lot. So I will provide a summarized answer in writing to that. What is spurred job? Where are we as an economy in 2 pages? Why is the West Coast district losing, showing net job losses? It's manufacturing. But it's always, for the last 5 years, there's been a net contraction of manufacturing. So what type of manufacturing? We will try and look at and see if the Quantic data spits that out. Overberg district, it's agriculture. Agriculture is contracting over there. CKD, it's public administration. What exactly in public administration? So there should be an answer there. But it's a very pertinent question to know exactly why are these economies contracting? Where is it contracting? I won't be able to give you the town level data. Nobody in this country can give you that. Unless you go and do the primary data collection, which is a costly exercise. Yeah, I hope I've covered everything.
So just to respond to a question about tourism data and the sourcing of tourism data, predominantly the tourism data included in the mirror comes from Wesgro. They conduct, as far as I'm aware, their data gathering on a sample size. So while the data they gather is very valuable, it is not necessarily directly applicable on a larger scale. So in some districts, the source markets and the tourism data may seem a bit sort of strange as opposed to what is experienced on the ground, but that is a sample size usually through official ports of entry, so the airports and so forth, is where that tourism data is gathered.
Sorry, Minister. I think Member Nkonlo asked the question around the drive of food poverty with specific reference to Drakenstein. But maybe before Ashley comes in, also to indicate, although this is the mirror today, we must also look at how we are responding from a provincial perspective. So some of the specific issues in the mirror would deal with departmental mandate issues. So when we talk about what are the social interventions, when we look at food poverty, one would have to see how does the Department, for instance, of Social Development potentially respond to these particular issues. And then also because we share this information with the municipality, when we go into the LGM tech process, one would also then have to see then if this is what the data is telling us, how does that municipal budget also respond to the evidence that we are putting in the system? Ashley?
The food poverty one, and I'm not trying to defer. I'm not. I won't defer an economic question, but I don't have all the answers. Okay, there is, and I'm giving you the straight because I can bull dust you here and tell you it's this and that and that. But it is something that I will delve into deeper and find out in terms from a data perspective. You must understand the data that we use across the board per section has to be the same for the metro and all other districts. I cannot delve into where the metro will have more information on something and possibly Stellenbosch, but Drakensberg won't. So to answer that very succinctly, what I'm saying is on the food poverty, I don't have the direct answer as to what is driving that food poverty, but ultimately it goes down to disposable incomes. So if I can be very, very short, where you have a contraction in economic activity, and typically in Drakensberg, that's agriculture. So you're having the key net labor absorber, which is agriculture. If agriculture contracts, which is happening in Drakensberg, then you're having net job losses. When you're having net job losses, you then find a situation where that trickles down into households. So there's no income into that household, and where there's no income into that household, the disposable incomes shrink, the ability to pay for goods and services and to consume, the consumer ability, the disposable income through to the consumer ability of that household is constrained. That would drive food poverty. So I don't have the exact answer as to what it is, but in simplistic terms, it's the contraction of economic activity. So it's job losses, it's net job losses per sector. And if you ask me what is that sector, it's the contraction of the agricultural sector. Now, why is that agricultural sector contracting? Many reasons. I mean, that's the answer in itself as well. So, but yeah, when I respond in writing to the net job losses per municipality, I will try and equate it to which sectors that we can do easily, which sectors are shedding jobs per municipality.
Just on the West Coast tourism data, over and above the sources of their data, I did engage West Coast to find out what they could possibly do to get us better data. And they are currently in conversation in terms of how they can bolster some of the data that they provide us on a regular basis for our publications. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think thank you very much for those responses. I think it's certainly been a pretty engaging discussion so far. I just want to look and see if there would be a further round of questions. I see Member Bryant's hand. I see Member Masipa. I'm just looking to see on the online platform if there are any hands there. So I think, and then Member Murray and Member Stoffel. So I think if we're looking at that, then I think we can go ahead with you, Member Bryant, Masipa, Murray, Stoffel in that order. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm very cognizant of the time, so it's extremely quick. It's basically just, I think, what you were just talking about now in terms of data. If one looks, for instance, at the mirror for the metro, where the vast majority of the residents of the Western Cape are located, the vast majority of economic activity is taking place, and you look at the size of the two documents, I think that's, for us as non-economists, I speak for myself, that's where you see an anomaly. You think, oh, hang on a second, where's all the information for the main economic driver of the province? But the way you explain it makes sense because it's down to those specific municipal regions. But yeah, I think on the face of it, it looks disparate. Yeah.
Member Masipa.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the answers. But I think my water question was not answered. Um, just on the next point that I just want to make, Chair, is that this morning my engagement with regards to agriculture is the number of farms that are going on sale. So I do not know if you have really looked at that in terms of really going forward, because I think there is pressure in the agricultural sector right now, especially with the contracting harvest, and obviously here we're talking about the grain side of agriculture. But also, with the foot and mouth disease, issues, we just had a load of sheep returning with livestock because of obviously, the war in the Middle East. So that immediately, affected the price. The price kind of fall immediately. So that I think has got a long-term impact on the overall, agriculture situation. So I think that's one area that you might have to look at. I know that this data was not prepared with this in mind, but I think it's an area that you might look at. Really, I think the reason why I asked regarding the investment, those investment per region, is really primarily that the numbers are very important because investors wants to go where the money is. If you put the money, you crowd in, other guys will want to come in, so it's just very important for this kind of information to really just have the numbers because investors, people with money, I'm a former banker, so, you follow the money, so people will want to follow the money. Those that are listening, they probably will be excited to see, if they can put more money in some of the areas that you have indicated that there's quite a huge capital investment. Thanks, Chair. That's it from my side. Water.
Member Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I want to thank them for the responses. Just wanted, when I said about importing poverty, it was with respect to what's really happening in the previously, if I could put it, apartheid designed communities. Okay. So I know that we need data in order to take decisions. Data as accurate as possible so that we can respond more accurately or appropriately to what's happening. So when we say that, when I say importing poverty, the reality is that when people migrate to the Western Cape, they go and set up house in a previously disadvantaged community where there's formal housing, depreciating or resulting in a depreciation of the value of those properties. And that I don't see us actually noting that somewhere. That how are we going to respond to that? Because a previously disadvantaged community is again being disadvantaged on an economic level. Talking about my own hometown where I used to live. It's a real reality on the ground. So it's not to say that I'm just trying to say we're importing poverty. I'm seeing it on the ground. And I'm saying, how are we going to, if we don't measure that, how are we going to respond to that? Then in terms of, I sit in this house and I hear how we giving out title deeds, for example. The government is building houses and giving title deeds. And they say, when you have a title deed, you are economically better off now. But it's not always the reality. That's what the government is saying. If you go and measure whether there has been generational wealth created, then you can see, but it's not working. Something you started, but it's not necessarily created generational wealth. So I'm just saying that my question was genuinely just to get to the bottom of it. Then In closing, Mr. Chair, because I know it's late and it's time to go, but the metro is a very big, it's 5 million people. It used to have the districts called Blauberg District, Cape Flats District, Helderberg District, Khayelitsha Mitchells Plain District, Northern District, Southern District, Table Bay District, Tygerberg District. Just saying those are districts within a metro. We should also know what's going on per district so that we can appropriately respond there. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Marais, Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me appreciate the response. Although, in terms of the response, I'm not really satisfied in the answering. One of the questions is the one that Member Masipa have referred to the issue of water, where there's most of the municipalities is indicating it's fine and holly dolly, whilst we are sitting with areas with no water. So for now, and I know at the end of the day, the issue will be time. That's why we had a problem with the matter being tabled today on the same day. And then also, Chair, I like if the committee can try to simplify things. Because when you simplify things in answering or presenting, that's when you will attract your people, your citizens of Western Cape who listen to this committee work. I was listening into the answers. Our answers is very vague from the reality that we are experiencing on ground level. Hence, I'm applauding the HODC have tried to bring it closer to the people to say, fine, here's the data, but let's balance this data with the data of the departments, with the data of, you understand? So, and the budgets of the departments pertaining these issues that has been mentioning here. Because you will find some of these issues that has been mentioned is historical issues. And you just wonder, when is this historical issues going to be resolved? One of the historical issue in this province is the EPWP workers. Member Nkondlo is the one who's constantly asked around that workers. So I don't want to derail the committee because I can see it's about time. But I'm just mentioning it. There's a lot of issues that we are not being clarified on this matter issue. But for now, I will pause because I can see I will go nowhere. It's just a wall. It's just bumping and sorry, Chair. I'm honest. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think thank you to the members there. And I think I think before Provincial Treasury responds, I think, you know, what is clear.
Can you note my hand, Chair?
Sorry?
I'm asking that you note my hand before you give to Provincial Treasury.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'd asked earlier if there was anybody from online, but you can go ahead in the meantime.
No, thank you, Chair. I just wanted, perhaps I appreciate the response around the food poverty data. And I accept the fact that, you know, if there's data in the metro and there's no data in Drakenstein, it may skew the observation or the analysis. What is of my interest is actually if the department can then go back and work on this and bring back the response to this of what could be. And I appreciate the notion that in Drakenstein, the low wages, which are actually a factor of a reducing or decreasing agriculture. And I think for me, this is actually important because I think one member did raise the issue of the displacement of local workers, and particularly in the agri sector, because the agri sector has been one that has been actually found having this particular reality of locals and farm workers in particular that are displaced by foreign nationals, and at most undocumented foreign nationals, but also those that are documented, because I think the Department of Agriculture has actually confirmed and shared with us their guidelines for farmers on how to employ immigrants. So this may be one of the factors that for me would be interesting to see, let alone if you look at the land use and rezoning in Drakenstein in particular on agriculture land versus others, which now part of what you are seeing with the in-migration outside of the group or the category Member Mare refers to, which is the lower LSMs. If you consider that also in migration, also as I think the official from the department indicated, that it also bring, those that are skilled. And one of the things we would have seen is actually the changing complexion, particularly in the agri sector, where some of the land use, and I think there is data to prove that, which I would like the department actually to check with us, because in the Department of Agriculture, part of the conversation we would have had also with the Minister of Agriculture is actually the battle that they're having, with the land use or rezoning of agri land for other, particularly property and other high end, where the former vineyard farms or farms in general are being turned, into high-end property. Yes, the municipality would want that because perhaps it would have better yields in as far as, rates and taxes for the municipality, but also it is displacing workers, and the other side thereof is actually this food poverty. So I'm raising this to say I'm appreciating the response, and I would want, correctly as it stated, that we use this information so that we can make informed policy choices, and economic decisions in as far as how do we mediate against, the dynamics of the economy, that we are presented with. Because on the one hand, yes, you can look at the low LSMs, referred by Member Mare, and the implication thereof, but also you must balance that scale so that you are able to look at the economy in a much more comprehensive way, to also look at the high end and what it is doing, because amongst others, again, in the city of Cape Town, it has been proven there's a serious challenge now, of a high cost of living, property prices, that are skyrocketing, which even had people calling for rental sort of what do you call this now? The term just ran out of my head, but sort of government intervention, because a middle income or middle class earner in the city of Cape Town and as a metro is becoming unaffordable for its local citizens, wherein actually in one article they were just producing, again, property data that demonstrate that in the city of Cape Town, to have a 3-bedroom house, you would need to actually be earning anything, in terms of your net income around 700,000, and these are not salaries if we talk again, about the BPO sectors and all these sectors that are growing because their salary levels are way below that, which therefore says your first home buyers are not going to be able to afford, prices. So when we raise these issues, we are utilizing exactly this economic data because what the state is about and its role in the economy is to actually ensure through its regulation and again to ensure the redistributive nature of the economy and the economic benefit of the domestic economy, because we can't have a situation where we only are appreciating the economic performance as we see it of industries, but it is making the citizens worse off, because those citizens that are worse off, they become part of the indigent database, and they are once again a cost to the economy. And we all want an economy where our tax base is growing, than sort of a triangle where only a few who must therefore subsidize, many that are poor, at the base. So I think this Mero is important because of that particular conversation, because it's no longer only about celebrating the fact that we may be performing better than the next province. It is about looking inward and seeing this economic growth and performance of ours and its positiveness. Is it helping to actually equalize amongst our own citizens, which are the citizens whom first and foremost in terms of our oath, we are actually obliged to ensure that they live a better, and a reasonable and affordable life under the economy that we must manage. So for me, I would really appreciate that the department is able to produce that information for us, so that when we consider what the budget decisions that a minister has made for this particular budget, we are able to, using that scientific data, to check whether the decisions we're making on the left hand are actually, balanced on the right. We're not making decisions on the left hand that are actually making the scale on the right to go, down. So we want a situation where we use this data to really pick on these conversations. And therefore, when there is a call of private sector participation, it's not only a call for private sector participation to come in and say, we are resolving public sector inefficiencies, but we must also look at the market externalities. We must also be able to look at, that downside of the market, the issues from which markets are actually creating other problems for the public, which therefore now the state must either finance, through housing, as we saw now, the farm workers that are losing jobs in those Drakenstein municipality and many other agri strong municipalities. Those farm workers that are losing employment, where do they go to? Because majority of them, even with Esther, which is trying to ensure that by the time they exit, that particular industry, at least they are not worse off. But most of the chances, and I'm sure data can confirm what I'm saying, most of the instances, those farm workers, after working in those in that industry for 30 to 40 years, you find them now queuing for an RDP house, which must be paid by the state at plus 100,000 rand from the coffers of the national fiscus. Whilst this person was contributing, to a growth of a farm operation, but is unable to even live out of there with just a house, it could be just a 40 square meter house, let alone, enough insurance or income that will carry. And this person now must again, on top of the house from the state, must then also chew for the SASSA grants. And this becomes a cost that is emanating from a failed market, because it is the market through, the employment contracts that these people would have contributed to. So I'm asking, Chair, that we are engaging in this particular conversation not for a tick box, We are in this conversation because we want to understand the economic choices that are being made by the provincial government, including municipalities. That is why we're going to make an issue about the fact that we get the information only on the day that we are supposed to debate it. Two, we do not have sufficient time to engage with this very information.
Member Nkondo, thank you. Yeah. I think if, I'm just also would like to perhaps suggest a way forward. I think what we've seen is that Provincial Treasury has provided us with a presentation today, which is, clearly trying to summarize a very voluminous set of documentation that you have and incorporating as well the socio-economic profile into the entire economic picture. And I think the best way to take this forward is that members now have all of the documentation. They are now able to go and study that and possibly come forward with a number of areas that we need to explore a little bit further, and that we can then pass on to Provincial Treasury and hold a session or two going forward so that we can try and unpack a number of these issues. And I think, as has been indicated, many of these issues impact also on the one side on municipalities and also on other departments in what we're doing. So it's what we've added is an additional learning exercise that we need to go through. So that is what I'm thinking should be the way forward that we need to take. I don't know if, Minister, if you have and your team has any comments to make on some of these questions and remarks that have been made now in this round.
No problem. Chairperson, I'm going to try to deal with some of the overview questions and then I'll ask the team. Yes, Member Brian, the reason that the Cape Town book is smaller is because for legal purposes, one could consider it one municipality. Or the metropolitan, whereas the thicker books is because there's multiple municipalities in that particular district. So for consistency, we have to table the same information for every municipality. Otherwise, we would have given you 30 books in this regard. In terms, and since I'm on consistency, let me just also quickly then deal with consistency of data that Ashley mentioned earlier. We try our best to be as fair as possible towards all municipalities and the metropolitan in terms of how we publish data. Because tomorrow, day after tomorrow, we will come to the committee, publish extra data for one, and then the other 29 says, but you didn't publish the same data for us. So as much as we do try our best to put the most accurate as possible data on the table, we also do try to be as consistent and as fair in terms of publication of data for everyone. Where committee members would like us to go further into detail and get more information, we will definitely do that. And where we do have extra information, we will send that to the committee in this regard. And we always, as a treasury, we always look for more innovative ways year upon year to improve our data and improve the information that we submit to the committee. In terms of water, one of the items under water would be that there would be some policy responses within the budget tabling, but from our perspective, there also needs to be a response from municipalities from a budgetary perspective on water because it is their mandate. It is unfortunate that in some municipalities are going through really difficult circumstances where they really aren't getting enough water. And then in that particular municipality, the problem might be a lack of rain, for example. But in other municipalities, sometimes there's enough water, but there's lack of management or there's lack of leadership in that particular municipality. So water problems across every municipality is also not the same. Some are genuine, we don't have water. And some are actually, we did not do the job in order to make sure that the water that we have gets to the tap of the resident. And in some municipalities, we are seeing, for example, where infrastructure is dilapidated or inadequate, or pipes are being stolen, and things are being vandalized, and a myriad of problems across different municipalities. And Chair, I think that our colleagues definitely in local government and environmental affairs and development planning really are able to, with the committee, go into detail as to what is the outlook per municipality, why is the outlook the way it is, what is currently being done, what is being put on the table. And they are experts. They're experts in what they do. For example, we've been working with local government because of geohydrologists that are necessary and so on. The member knows that there's been lots of water problems that people have been reading about. Knysna, for example, where we attempted intervention and we received a decline regarding intervention in the NCOP. But some things in life is not necessarily a money problem. Some things in life, in this particular case, and Knysna is a good example, it's not necessarily a water problem, it's a management problem. If you manage the things you have, if you manage the budget you have, you should theoretically get the water from where it is to the tap. And we need to be honest about those type of things. In terms of agriculture, there's a few things in the economy really affecting agriculture quite severely. So even though agriculture within the context is showing progress, there are things that really are preventing agriculture from growing quicker, from expanding and scaling better and faster. Things such as fuel prices, and we will see now that part of the impact down the line of conflict is increase in fuel prices. An increase in fuel prices will eventually increase food prices. It's not, you can't take the two away from one another. You will see that drought, water and fire affects agriculture. You will see that foot and mouth disease affects agriculture, and that is why that as a provincial government, from our own provincial funding, we've already committed 100 million towards procurement of vaccines. Separate to that, the agriculture department went to the sector and said, what can we do about foot and mouth disease? And they came up with a 21-point plan between them to say, what are the things under movement control that we can do? What are the things under monitoring, surveillance, and traceability that we can do? What are the things under protocols that we can do? What are the things under recovery plans and awareness and education that we can do? And they're also working closely with disaster management. They're working closely with traffic in this regard. And as members would know, the Premier announced that we'll be procuring diagnostic scanners. In the SOPA, majority of the emphasis was the ability to detect, for example, illegal firearms and things like drugs. But something that the diagnostic scanners can also do is detect child trafficking within, for example, a truck. The thing the diagnostic scanner can also do is, for example, detect whether there's an animal in the truck. So part of the reason we want these diagnostic scanners is so that we can really make sure that what is on the road belongs on the road, that we are not busy with illegalities on our road. And that is really what, for example, those scanners are for. In terms of investment, it's particularly infrastructure investment, member Masipa was asking about this. You will see three sections under the CAPEX or capital investment or infrastructure investment in each book, where I think it's chapter 5 for each book, where it deals with what is a municipality spending on their capital investments. So you'll see the financial years for each municipality in the books. You will see what the province is spending for municipalities in the books, and we show the which departments as well. Is it health department, education department, and so on? And we also show what that private sector investment is. I'm just having a look. I just did a quick look here at the Cape Town book, for example. where under the private sector investment section, on page 89, for example, it says the finance sector recorded 29 billion rand in gross fixed capital formation. It speaks there at the top there about that. It gives some examples of what it is referring to, and then separate to your the gross fixed capital formation, it also shows you some graphs on your fixed capital stock and your GDP or annual growth. Again, like Ashley mentioned, is we will publish as much as we can, as accurate as we can, in order to assist members. Where you feel that maybe there's something else that we can contribute to the books, we are really open to suggestions. We do, however, obviously try our best to stay to the most official information that we can possibly get. In terms of in-migration and poverty levels, I just want to indicate we don't measure low-income immigration. We measure all immigration. Whether you make R1 million or not make R1 million, we measure whether you are migrating to our province. And it's important because migration is not just about poverty, it's also about, are we prepared as a government to respond to in-migration? Do we have enough schools? Do we have enough clinics and hospitals? What does the housing look like? Are the people that are immigrating requiring assistance from government regarding access to housing? If so, what happens? If not, then what? You know, it's water, it's electricity, it's roads, it's sanitation. It's also as departments, as councils, the in-migration statistics are important also for development planning, that we make sure that are we able to meet the demand that is coming to our province. Generational wealth, it is very difficult to measure, but I think that is it's a nice challenge to pose to the Treasury about what does that conversation look like, because the first question I would have is which metrics do we use to measure generational wealth. But I think that's a nice conversation to have, and it also speaks to redress. It speaks to how we make sure that that we really have reform within our economy, and making sure that we move up the ladder so that we can really grow the middle class also in South Africa, because that's really what you want as a country. You want a large middle class in order to sustain your economic tax bases and to make sure that we increase prosperity. EPWP workers, we will ask the team chair just to maybe submit the EPW worker figures from the province. We do have figures from the departments on EPWP. The reason we mentioned it previously is because the EPWP numbers are over and above the jobs data that SARS measures. So if you add the EPWP numbers, there is a possibility that the jobs figures for the Western Cape might look even better than what it is currently in the book. Again, I'm making an inference. We were talking about the differences between inferences and the causal links earlier. I'm making an inference here that if the EPWP numbers are not in the SARS data and we add it on, there is a possibility that the jobs numbers, the jobs figures, the jobs percentages, and so on might even create a better picture. But that's an inference at this point in time. In terms of the food poverty data and how we can better that data, definitely the suggestions are noted, Chairperson, and we will also have a conversation as a team as to how we can better provide some of that data for you. On the more policy decisions and questions that lies with the mandate of the Department of Agriculture, I will not deem myself an agricultural expert, and I will convey the requests and the notions to my colleagues and the teams in agriculture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. I think HOD says you covered. Yeah. Yes, I think this stage, I think we can then wrap up the conversation for today. And certainly thank you for the presentation that you have brought and the discussion that has unfolded and has developed here on a very valuable set of information, data that has been provided to us. And I think it is up to us now as a committee to have a look a little bit further. And, I think my view is going to be for committee just to reflect on what we have and to give everyone a bit of reading homework to go and read up what we have, because it's this is not a one-night novel that we're going to do. It's probably take at least 2 nights, but it certainly give committee members an opportunity then to frame any further questions and every further issue that they would like to be explored, and then we can take it from there. So I think thank you very much for the excellent work that you have done and the documents before us. So you can probably go and celebrate the Thursday night now. And while doing that, you can think of your weekend and what you would like to do over the weekend. So thank you very much for being with us. And the team is then excused, and committee will then just contemplate resolutions and the way forward. Thank you very much.
Chair, please, can you stop Honorable Mare from leaving?
Yes, he's now wanting to disappear before he gets his homework. There is tea and coffee down the passage if you would like to. Thank you, committee. I think that was a fairly long and detailed session that we had. And I think one aspect of it is obviously we've received this report. It's been tabled before us. And I think we've, what we're now dealing with here is obviously consideration and adoption of the Miro report that we have before us. And then the whole question then on what are the issues that we would like to have explored a little bit further. I'm not sure whether it is appropriate right now to think of it, because I think we've had to have a closer look at the documentation before us in terms of framing that. We are next Thursday, we've got another budget committee report. On the one side of it, we will be receiving the budget at that point. But I think it's probably useful for us to go through these documents and to try and frame what the issues are that we would like to deal with. And then also, whether we then have another session to try and deal with the entire Miro, or whether we split it into, for instance, 2 meetings to have in different districts. So, that we just have a look at a further meeting after we get through the budget phase, because certainly we're going to be caught up in this budget phase right through for the rest of this month. So, whatever we tackle will only be able to be tackled next month at the earliest. I see Member Masipa, your hand.
Chair, thank you very much. I tend to agree with what you're saying, because I'm just thinking that, we can now make resolutions right now. And whereas, we haven't really gone through the marrow and find that all the resolution that you are making have been answered. I mean, Honorable Boyson raised a hand, and only to realize that the question that he was going to answer is in the book, so he was answered, So I'm just thinking that maybe you are right in terms of let's go explore a little bit in the book, and then if there is a need, maybe to just convene and look at some of the resolutions that we need to really put, or we go into budget and obviously use the marrow to conduct a proper oversight in terms of the budget that will be tabled. Is it addressing the issues that were raised in the marrow and so forth? So I think that could be, those are the options that I put on the table. Either we really use the book to go and obviously engage properly and effectively with the budget, and obviously budget of various departments, because marrow does not really, it's transversal, it covers other departments as well. Alternatively, we decide to sit and then have a discussion on issues that we want to put as a resolution. Thanks, Chair. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Yes, no, I think I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think what we must remember that this Miro, in effect, covers the year 24 to 25. So it is, in effect, a review document, as its name indicates, while also giving an outlook. But at the same time, this document also gives us a certain picture and an understanding of the state of municipalities in this instance, and various aspects that we should be considering when we're looking at the budget when that comes next week. And it could well be that there are going to be the matters that we explore within this document are possibly not all going to be covered within the budget through lack of funding or whatever else, and we need to try and craft our way forward. I see that we have Member Nkondlo. Is that Member Nkondlo? Yes. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think the first issue we will have to be assisted in this committee is to really deal with the issue of the presentation of the marrow in an empowering fashion. And I make the case that we ask that when the marrow is to be presented, we get the books in advance. I am not sure what is this issue of confidentiality. What exactly is confidential? Because this is a book of data that is already available, as it uses, sources of statistics and data that is already out there from SARS and other. So I am not sure what confidentiality and confidentiality to whom. So I am making this a case that we ask that we are given, when the marrow must be presented, we must be given the books before. The presentation and the analysis that the department is going to give to us as standard, I think it's supposed to be a week before or so, that must be followed. We can't continue to be in this kind of conversations when we have to sit, we say, anyway, we did not read the document, but we spent almost 2 hours now debating because if that was the case, we should have sent the minister and the department packing and said, until we read the document, then we can come and have a conversation. So let's take ourselves serious by making a resolution that this matter of the presentation of the mayor must come to us in advance, unless the chair or any member understand the basis of the confidentiality of the information and who this information is being protected from. Secondly, Chair, is to say I support the notion that says the department must come back after we would have read, and we give each other some time on by when, as different members, we bring out issues that we think needs clarity, and we write to you through the committee coordinator of those issues, so that when the department comes for the second round, the department also tries, on top of the issues that we have raised, to answer some of those issues that would have picked up from the book. And also consider that in this year, we identify a municipality, and I would want to suggest Drakenstein on the food poverty, wherein we can have a discussion. We are not imposing. We know the old script about them being independent. I mean, in this parliament, we even call to subpoena national government, whilst it is also a different sphere. In the interest of intergovernmental, we call a municipality like Drakenstein just to understand the facts. It could be even a finance committee to another finance committee, just to understand the drivers of food poverty in that, as explained in the Mero, and what is it as the municipality they are doing, and we can work together in trying to reduce. Because it's one thing to be sitting and waiting for information to come to us, it's another to actually be actively involved in using data to resolve problems. So I want to make that proposition, around Drakenstein as one of the municipality, so that we are able to take this data of Mero and make it live in the conceptualization, but also in the decision making, without imposing on any municipality, but just to say, here is what our data is saying, and what is it that as a municipality you think you could do, or what is driving this problem.
I don't think we want to get into the debate at this stage. To me, what we've had today is this morning
Chair, why do you keep on when I speak? You feel that you need to stop me when I'm speaking? Because I think you allow everybody time to speak, and then they end and hand over to you. But you seem to be interjecting when I speak before I even end.
Could you wrap
because
up then, please,
you have not put any time. You've not put any time to anybody. No, I've wrapped up. I'm just asking because I'm seeing you are repeating this thing that when I speak, you choose outside of other members to interject when I speak.
Member Bryant.
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, because I know we're about to wrap up. I mean, I just want to find out, maybe the Secretary can advise all. I mean, is there a requirement that the Mayor is tabled to the budget on the same day that it is presented to the House? Because surely that could be a remedy going forward that gives members an opportunity to read through the documents on that day, and then potentially have our meeting the day after or 2 days after, so we have an opportunity to engage with the material, so we don't arrive here, kind of seeing and hearing things for the first time. I just wonder if there is a statutory requirement. I don't know. Maybe there is.
I think perhaps before procedural officer responds, as I read it, the speech comes today, and they've given us a briefing, which is what we received this afternoon. We were able to interrogate on the briefing, but I don't think that doesn't prevent us having a full debate and a discussion on this documentation. And that is what I'm proposing going forward, because we now have the documentation before us. And as I've suggested, we've now got the opportunity to go and frame some of the issues that we would like to interrogate. As I think Member Nkondlo has indicated, their issues. Member Masipa might well have other issues. that also want that we also need to integrate, as all of us would have. And at the same time, it gives us the opportunity then to read up on each of these municipalities and where we know there are particular issues, and we can drill down deeper in that. Member Masipa, Member Stoffel.
I just want to say support your move and Honorable Ngondlo's move that we invite the department at a convenient time to just engage thoroughly on the matter. Thank you.
Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think in terms of what Member Nkondlo have raised, I think we should really take note what she's saying. There is members who's getting irritated about when a person speaks. And it's not supposed to be like that. We are a committee here. We're supposed to listen to each other. We should not be kind of try to intimidate, because remember, each and every member is per mandate here. And that mandate is supposed to be carried out by the same member in assisting the committee or bring information that the department might miss and assist the committee. I think the concentration should be on that. And because to look at you when a member speaks, it's like, stop this member is speaking too long. It's wrong. It's wrong. So I'm sympathizing with Member Nkondlo, and I hope as chairpersons we will take note of it and try to protect the member on the floor. I always reprimand Member Masipa about that. I always. And then it sounds like I'm rude. I'm not rude. Then I'm in support what you are proposing, Chair. I'm in support because we fear a situation, Chair, whereby we are going to endorse now things that a document that we didn't study, that we don't know, and tomorrow we have just endorsed something opposite that then hamper our communities there. Then what? So the best is, as you have indicated, and let the department come back and we discuss the document if so, like what is Member Nkondlo have proposed. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, I think we appear to be in agreement as to what we want to do.
Yeah.
And I think it is just, that we just try and formulate how we take that forward. So I think that is what is important, and what I'm suggesting then, as we are meeting next week, that gives us each an opportunity then to frame the type of issues to direct what that presentation is that we would like to have included when we submit that then to Provincial Treasury. So I think what the effect of that is that we are not going to adopt there's not an adoption of what we have.
We don't make
That's as I see it. Okay, so I think if you perhaps just put that on the record there, that everybody understands that.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, like the Chairperson mentioned, that the matter has been referred to the committee, and there's no obligation for the committee to exhaust everything on that matter. That matter book, the matter that has been referred is about 6 books. So nothing stops the committee from meeting on every district at a later time, add it into your committee program. But the committee can, there's an obligation, or basically based on the referral, the committee must adopt a report today just to say that they concluded on the deliberations, or they've received the report. There's nothing stops you unless the committee wants to deliberate further on it after the Western Cape appropriation. But procedurally, we can adopt that report today. I can flight that report. Did I just hear somebody saying something? Sorry, Chair. So it's based. Nothing stops the committee from adding these matters onto the agenda for further discussion. Yeah. So what the committee can do today is, if there's resolutions that they want to make and request for written input based on what was requested, and then after the written input was provided, discuss it further. The committee can decide which way they want to go on this. Does it make sense, Chair?
Could we frame it in the way that we received the mirror report, and that it has been considered, and the committee will would like to deliberate further on the report?
Chair? Yes, correct. Let me just open this report, Chair.
So there's no part of endorsement there.
No, there's no support. There's no
support.
No, you don't need to support it or non-support it. It's just a matter of that the committee has received the memo that was tabled in the House, and that it has come now to the committee, because as per the referral this afternoon, it has been referred to the committee. So as per the rules, we must just acknowledge that the committee has received the report from the department, and you basically considered it today. Let me just open so I can show the committee.
Considered it too.
Nothing stops the committee from changing. You don't have to say that you concluded your deliberations, but you have basically received the report from the Department of Provincial Treasury, and that it will
consider the briefing.
Considered, yes.
The briefing, and would like to deliberate further.
We must not be technical here. When we say we considered, which means we have agreed on something, we have considered something. We didn't consider anything there, because there is still unclear information that the committee couldn't answer to us. You are correct, Chair, when you are saying we have received that.
Yes, and perhaps what I should say, we've received the report and the presentation.
Yes.
And in considering the report, the committee has referred it for further deliberation.
Yeah, we can put it like that.
Okay, so are we happy to propose and second that? Okay. Right. Okay, so I think that then brings the work of today to conclusion, and the meeting is then adjourned. Thank you.